Today, our series takes a turn. We're looking at the effectiveness of our approach. We're going to start with a tricky one.
Among active evangelizers, there are two main camps. Some like to focus on the law and judgment, while others think the focus should be on love and grace. Both camps believe that their approach is right, and both are embarrassed by the other. Today, I'd like us to look at a couple of issues that I think lie behind this. To start with the law and judgment camp. They believe that being faithful to the historic gospel message means being firm on communicating all its ingredients, including the uncomfortable ones. Now, I think this is a good thing, but the issue is deeper because they are also often uncompromising in the method of communicating that message, being locked into a particular style of evangelism and using a lot of jargon and complicated scriptures. And while their theology may be correct, they don't always consider where the listener's coming from and how they will perceive what is being said. Their goal is to get the gospel to people, regardless of whether people want to hear or not. And this can come across as being judgmental and harsh. Some people on the streets are understandably disinterested as a result. But even then, these evangelizers sometimes explain these negative responses by pointing out they're being persecuted for declaring the truth. After all, the gospel is an offence. The second camp is all about being cool and relevant in today's culture. They're keen to communicate in a language people will understand and use modern technology to present their message. However, unfortunately, some don't appear to have studied what the historic gospel message contains and end up communicating a watered-down modern gospel, which is sometimes no gospel at all. People responding to this attractive message sometimes don't know what they're actually doing. They haven't counted the cost and are just giving Jesus a go. The evangelizer's focus is on love, grace and positivity, and they can't understand why the people in the first camp are so negative with all their talk of sin and judgment. After all, God is so good and so loving. They're embarrassed by Camp 1 and all their archaic methods and wish they'd stop giving Christianity such a bad name and putting people off. Whatever camp you find yourself leading towards, I know this. You are sincere in your desire to reach out and must be commended for actually doing something. But these are two very different approaches and it's worth discussing. Questions are raised regarding content and methodology, and it takes humility from us all to look at this. Are we preaching the true gospel? Are our approaches appropriate? Or could there be a better way to engage conversation and communicate? Are we willing to consider other views and learn and adapt? One key consideration is whether we should use God's law when explaining the gospel. My answer is this: how will people understand their need of a Saviour unless they first understand that they're a sinner? They won't understand the good news unless they first know the bad news. But if they understand the dilemma, then they'll see the significance of what Jesus has done and will also appreciate why you are sharing with them. But if we are not careful in our tone and manner when discussing the law, we may come across as judgmental and negative. To avoid this, it's essential that we include ourselves as sinners. We're just one beggar showing another beggar where to find food. Having a loving and gentle attitude establishes trust, it opens people up, and this enables the gospel message to be communicated most clearly. Here's a summary of what I think we can learn. The first camp could improve their communication, modernize and think about how they can be more positive at communicating this amazing message. The second camp needs to make a commitment to preach the full gospel message, not just a Jesus is awesome message. It is the gospel that's the power of God for salvation for everyone who believes. The way forward lies between these two camps, preaching the full gospel in a positive, modern and appropriate way. And as a side point, I'm quite sure that many pastors would be more than happy to endorse evangelizers with this kind of approach. It's about the true message being communicated with good people skills. Friends, if our hearts remain humble and teachable, we can continue to improve. Let's do this so that we'll all be able to be the best that we can be at communicating the best message of all time. We'll discuss some vital communication keys in our next tutorial. See you then.